Okay, let's get this show on the road and start off with multiplying by 10. Now, what do you do when you multiply something by 10? Well, there are two ways of looking at it. And the first way is to move the decimal point. So here's the calculation 230 times 10. And if we take this here and there's the decimal point, then we can move it one place to the right, like this. And then we get left with a gap here. So we need to fill that, so we're going to put a 0 in. So we get the answer 2,300. Now the other way of looking at this is to move all the numbers along. So here we've got the same calculation again, and what we could do is take the 2 in the hundreds here and move it into the thousands, the 3 in the tens and move it into the hundreds, and then the 0 in the units here, that would go into the tens, and we get left with a gap again, so we fill that with a 0. So if we do that, we can see we get exactly the same answer. Now, it doesn't matter which way you do it, go with the one that you're most happy with, that you understand and makes sense to you. But for the rest of these, I'm going to move the decimal point because that's what I find easiest. So let's have a look at one more example of multiplying by 10 then. Here we go, we've got 91.8 times by 10. I'm going to move that decimal point one place to the right. We get the answer 918. Okay. Now we've got multiplying by 100. Right, so to multiply by 100, we need to move the decimal point two places. So here we go. Here's our sum, here's the decimal point, and we're going to move it one place and two places, and we get the answer 216.4. Okay, here's another one. And again, we're going to move that decimal point two places, so 1, 2. And you see there, we got a gap formed at the end here, so we filled that with a 0. We get the answer 75,280. Right, what about multiplying by 1,000 then? Here we go, here we've got a number, multiplied by 1,000. This time we want to move the decimal point three places. So if we go here, we're going to move it 1, 2, 3 places. We get the answer 5,954.3. Here's another example. Again, move that decimal point three places. 1, 2, 3. And we found some gaps here, so we've had to fill those with zeros. We got the answer 27,300. So for multiplying then, you want to move your decimal point to the right, and the number of places you move it depends on how big the number is. And actually, it's the same as the number of zeros there are. So if we actually wanted to multiply a number by 10,000, we want to move it four places, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. Right, what about multiplying by numbers like 30, 600 and 2,000 and stuff? Well, here's an example. We've got 15 times 300. And actually we can do this in two parts to help make it a bit easier. So the first part then, if we multiply by 3, so if we do 15 times 3, that's 45. Now we can move the decimal point. And we want to multiply by 100, so we're going to move it two places. And that's going to give us the answer 4,500. Right, so that's multiplying then. But what about dividing? Well, multiplying and dividing are opposite operations. So to divide by 10, we need to do the opposite of multiplying by 10, which means at this time we want to move the decimal point one place to the left. So here we've got an example, 1,700 divided by 10. I'm going to move that decimal point one place to the left, and we get 170.0. Now actually, we don't really need this 0 here, it's not telling us anything, so we can just get rid of that. So we just write our answer as 170. Okay, here's another example then. 8.658 divided by 10. I'm going to move that decimal point one place to the left to give the answer 0.8658. Now if you look here, we ended up with nothing here on the left hand side of the decimal point. So we've had to put a 0 there, so we got the right answer. Okay, dividing by 100 then. Well, this time we want to move the decimal point two places to the left. Here's our example, 725 divided by 100. So if we move the decimal point two places, we get the answer 7.25. Here's another one. I'm going to move that decimal point two places, get the answer 0.0268. If you notice, we got a gap here, so we had to fill that with a 0. And again, we ended up with nothing on the unit side, on the left-hand side of the decimal point. So we put a 0 there as well. Right, getting there now. Nearly at the end, dividing by 1,000. So can you guess how many places we need to move it by? Yep, it's 3. So 3,184 divided by 1,000. Going to move that decimal point 3 places, get the answer 3.184. Here we go, 210 divided by 1,000. Move that decimal point 3 places, we get the answer 0.21. Now if you noticed here, we ended up with a 0 again on the right hand side as the last digit. That 0 doesn't tell us anything, we don't need it, so I've just got rid of it there to give us the answer 0.21. Don't have to include those extra zeros when they're on the right hand side. So for dividing then, you want to move the decimal point to the left. The number of places you move it depends on how big the number is, and it's the same as the number of zeros, just like multiplying. What about dividing numbers like 30, 600 and 2000 then? Well, here is our example. We've got 4,800 divided by 200, and actually we can do this in 2 steps again to help make it a bit easier. So the first thing we can do then is we can divide by 2, so 4,800 divided by 2 is 2,400. Now we can move the decimal point and move it those 2 places, and we get the answer 24. Now actually, you could do that the other way around if you wanted. You could divide by 100 first, and then divide by 2. So if we divided by 100, 4,800 divided by 100 is 48, and then divided by 2 is 24. So you get the same answer either way, it doesn't matter. So to summarise then, when you're multiplying, you want to move the point to the right. When you're dividing, you want to move the point to the left. And the number of places you want to move the point is the same as the number of zeros there are.